And let's go live. What do you say, huh? Sorry, I was just a little bit slow getting back to my chair here. I had to prepare my tea. Hi, everybody. Pour my cup of here. Tonight's beverage is green tea with cinnamon, honey, and a bit of milk. Good evening. Hi, good people. It's Jason with Green Country Agriculture Forestry here. Unable to talk, of course, until I have my first sip. All right. Let's see who we've got here. We've got Brian Perendi, John Pumphrey, and Carolyn Smith's Food Forest and Homestead in the house. Hi, y'all. How is everybody? I'm looking at StreamYard here, and it's showing me the time on, but it's not showing me how many people are in the lobby at the moment. Let's put this on pause. Type something in here real quick. There we are. I actually didn't have a copy of this live stream up. There it is. All right, now I can see chat. For some reason, I couldn't see our chat on the StreamYard. It's probably operator error on my part. Okay, yeah, there's okay. John's here. There's Brian. There's Faith. Okay, there's everybody. All right. For some reason, my comments on StreamYard were just not displaying. Fiddle with this thing. See if it corrects itself. If it doesn't, then oh well. Well, shucky darn. Yeah, I'm not getting comments in StreamYard, so I'm gonna have to just sort of go back and forth. I'll talk for a bit, and then I'll go over to YouTube and look and see what everybody says. It's not the comments aren't passing up to StreamYard for some reason. Maybe it's my connection rate. I don't know. I don't know. Karen Hill says won't be able to join tonight. Sorry, reading this off of YouTube. Won't be able to join tonight. Sorry. That's just unfortunate. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it and get on started. For starters, I have a little confession to make. I guess it's not a confession. It's more of a discovery that I'm going to share with you. You guys know this little tune that I've been picking out here recently, right? So that one, okay. So this tune, the way I envisioned it, it has a couple of different parts to it. It starts, at the E minor chord, then it goes to a C, and then to a G, right? And this part where I'm doing this, okay, that is a piece of a D chord. And whenever I'm strumming it and I'm doing the chorus, right there, okay, I'm going through E minor to C to G to D. But I made a discovery earlier today because I've become interested in a song that is really popular right now. That song, I'm going to drop a link here. Hopefully the link goes through. I'm going to drop it in StreamYard, and if it shows up in YouTube, that'll be great. Otherwise, I'll go over to YouTube and drop it there. Let me see if I can post a link first. All right, so if that link goes through, that's a link for a song that's gotten really, really popular. Okay, it went through. The song that's gotten really, really popular here recently. It's gotten on one site over 15 million views over the past week, but that particular site that has the 15 million views, that's not actually the artist's own website. It's another site that's playing that song. If you would like to go and view that song at the artist's own website, then follow the link that I just put down there. But the thing that I discovered was that particular tune. Okay, that's the exact same chord progression, but we changed the key and plays it a little bit different. But the lyrics that would go with it are entirely different from lyrics that I come up with. I come up with entirely different lyrics. Lyrics I come up would be like, I could spend my days sitting on the front porch watching the storms roll by, something like that. But this fellow, Oliver Anthony is his name, right? Came up with lyrics that went something like, I've been selling my soul, working all day, double time hours, bullshit. Oh, sorry. I was about to curse, by golly. It's the same chord progression, isn't it? Isn't that crazy? Exactly the same chord progression. Anyway, I figured that you guys might get a kick out of that. If you go watch him play, he's playing on a dobro, different musical instrument. It's not a guitar. I thought it was cool. Lots of cool music coming out these days. Of course, there's that one. Somebody said that's a radical song. Yeah, Oliver Anthony is the guy's name. Radical song. There's a lot of radical songs coming out these days. Let me throw another one at you real quick here. This link is to a song that is the closing credit song on the movie Jones Plantation. For you guys that have not got around to going and ordering and watching Jones Plantation yet, it is now available to stream at www.jonesplantationfilm.com. But this is the song that is on the closing credits, the outro to that. So the link there so you can go peruse it at your leisure. It's called New World Disorder. And that's a pretty powerful song too. And it's not one that I can play during the live stream, unfortunately. Let me see here. Da-da-da. Brian says, saw that on Patera's short. You're watching Patera now too? Tell you what. The Cheers intro song, right? All right. Since I'm in the mood to share music with you, here's one that you would probably think of as coming from really the opposite side of the spectrum, politically speaking. But since I don't have any place on the political map whatsoever, I can watch what I want. Now, this particular link is to an artist that goes by the name of Afro Man. And Afro Man had his house raided by the local sheriff's department, his local sheriff's department, not mine. They were looking for narcotics and apparently kidnapping victims. And they went through his house and they broke his gate, they broke his door, they tossed through everything and they looked through everything, and then they disconnected his cameras. And what happened after they disconnected his cameras, they was a little bit upset about. Incidentally, they didn't find any kidnapping victims or illegal narcotics. So it was entirely a waste of time, but the damages were still done to his property. And he was wanting, will you perhaps help repair my door? Do the right thing. After you've busted down my door looking for these things that are evidences of crimes that apparently you didn't get the memo. I'm not a trafficker and I don't sell narcotics. I make rap music. That's what I do for a living, right? He got everything on the security camera up until they disconnected the security camera. And after the security camera was disconnected, apparently something happened to some of his the CDs in his CD collection. He had some rare CDs that came up missing, some money that came up missing, and also some lemon pound cake that came up missing. And before the camera went off, there was a sheriff's deputy that was ogling the lemon pound cake in the kitchen. So you can kind of imagine what must have happened, but that was a little entertaining, and I think the attitude that he took was entirely the right attitude to have. He's not going and getting litigious and seeking revenge or being violent or anything like that. He just said, you know what? I'm going to take this video of what you guys did in my house when you're here looking for things that weren't here, and we're going to make a song about it. And hopefully what we get from people watching the song will actually pay for the damages, because chances are I'm not going to get satisfaction from you guys. And I thought that was a supreme example of class and a way to deal with an uncomfortable situation that unfortunately that does happen to people in this country. Melody is saying that she would like to move. I would like to move coming up. And I would be highlighting that comment, but for some reason I cannot. Let's try this. You go to private chat, then go back to comments and see if anything happens. Can I edit anything? No? Okay, nope. Once again, comments to StreamYard not working properly. We'll probably diagnose those after the broadcast because I don't want to spend too much time hung up on it. All right, so things are getting bad here. Should I move? That's our topic for today. I am going to share one more link with you because I think it's relevant. This is just the latest video that I put up there, entitled, of course, "Why Are Criminals in Charge?" which is a little an excerpt from a rant from a couple of weeks ago, when I just inspired, I think, to explain how we got to the point where we have such a distortion of law and order in our civilization and how that comes about. Then, of course, the question is, should I move? Going back months now, I've been saying over and over again that it's a good idea to get out of the cities if at all possible, because the cities are an awful lot like a feedlot. As long as it's profitable to bring in the water, to bring in the food, to take care of the waste, to do all those little things, as long as it's profitable, then yeah, there will be people that will be willing to bring in the food, that will be willing to cart away the waste, that will be willing to make sure that there's water, to make sure that there's lights and entertainment and all the other wonderful things that people want to have in cities. But whenever it stops being profitable, whenever it starts becoming, maybe break-even ground, maybe taking a little bit too much risk, then people are going to stop providing these services. When the services stop being provided, then things get very, very dicey inside the cities. And I understand there are places inside of cities that are suburban where you actually do have a bit of a lawn. You could grow a bit of a garden, and you're not completely and totally without any resources whatsoever. However, inside the cities and in the heart of these places where it's mostly concrete, and asphalt, steel, and glass, there's not a whole lot of things growing and not a lot of resources for people to survive on unless those things are brought in from the outside. Now, you can be on the outskirts of a city and still be okay, depending upon what city you're in. For example, Tulsa is one of those places where we have an awful lot of local agriculture. The attitude in general is a lot more conducive to people being able to live and let live, and not have to worry overly much about the urban decay. Yeah, this particular neighborhood is kind of run down. Most of the buildings are ancient, and there's not a whole lot of incentive to build them up into anything else because, as it turns out, this particular area used to be farmland. And, well, I mean, if I had my druthers, it'd become farmland again. And I think quite a few other people feel the same way. They're not really interested in going and trying to develop it up into more city because it's so much more valuable um, being farmland close to town. However, if you are not fortunate enough to live near a city like Tulsa, then you might want to consider getting out of the cities. But what if you can't? You can't get out of the city. You don't have enough money to be able to even get in on something like a real estate partnership agreement with another group of families to set up a farm just outside of town where you guys know that you can go when things get bad, or where you know that you can have a place where you can be growing your cattle or growing your pigs or growing whatever it is that you guys are growing for meat for the table for the use of your own families. Even though maybe you're not all leaving the city, it's a good idea to have those resources because you can't always get them from the grocery store, as we're beginning to find out, actually. Going to the grocery stores and finding that meat just isn't as common an item as it used to be, or perhaps it's not available at the price that we used to be able to get it for. And I hear stories about major producers starting to shut down. That's disturbing. This is something that you may not realize, and some people may not realize, but the largest producer of meat in the world is not the United States, it's Brazil. And the United States does get quite a bit of beef imported from other countries, including, I guess, at one time Brazil. However, that may not be the case for much longer. As a matter of fact, I'm not even certain that we have Brazilian beef coming into the country anymore. Somebody might be able to tell me one way or the other. But as Brazil moves into a different economic alliance and would not necessarily be trading with the United States, that means that a huge chunk of that meat market does not come knocking on our doorstep. So we have to get it from domestic sources. If major farms are closing down, major suppliers are closing down, then, well, we're not going to be able to find a lot of meat in the supermarket. So what do you do if you don't have a farm? You don't have a lot of money to go into a partnership on land. What else could you possibly do to make sure that you and your family have meat in your freezer later on? So, on the one hand, yeah, we've been trying to get people to move to the country, at least get connected to the country. This is where you want to go to things like Craigslist, go to your Facebook marketplace, check for your local area, and look for people that have farms in your area. Now, they may not be able to sell things like eggs and milk and meat through some of these marketplaces because of restrictions. However, you can make contact with these people, and separate from that platform, you can negotiate with those people to get those sorts of things. For example, if someone were to contact me and say, "Hey, Jason, would you set aside some eggs for me? I'd be willing to buy some of your chicken eggs from you." I'd be happy to sell you chicken eggs. I can't do it through the Facebook Marketplace because of restrictions. I could kind of hint around, and one of the hint arounds I've seen, I think on Craigslist, was that show a carton. I don't happen to have one in arm's reach. They just showed an empty carton and said, "Egg cartons filled." So they're offering the service of filling the egg cartons, right? But not, "I have eggs for sale." Weird. So you can just, after you make contact with the farmer, the person that has the land outside of town, say, "Hey, I saw from the pictures you had on Facebook that you guys are raising hogs. You got a sow and a boar, right? Yeah. Do you eat them all? Do you butcher them? Do you sell them?" Yeah. Break into that conversation. If they're interested in selling them, you can ask them, "Hey, how about this? How about I give you the money up front to pay for keeping one of those pigs? I'm going to give you the money up front to keep one of those pigs. 6 months is what it takes to take a piglet from kindling to butcher size. Time for butchering comes, we're going to come out with the family. We'll participate in the butcher. You're going to have to show us what to do at least the first time around, but we'll be buying the meat from you directly, and you can go ahead and lock that in with that local farmer." For example, around here, one of the families that's growing hogs is Robertson's Belly Acres. You can search for them. They're in the midst of doing a move right now to their new location and fixing up the farmhouse where they're at the moment. However, you can bet that they're still going to be producing bacon. They also make some really great tamales, by the way. If you have the opportunity to get a hold of some of Rachel's tamales, they are tasty. They could be a bit spicier, but they're good. But yes, find the farmers nearby. Find them, and go ahead, talk to them. If you think you're going to want milk, if you think you're going to want eggs, if you think you're going to want beef or bacon or sausage or any of the things that can be produced on the farm that you can't produce yourself, get a hold of these people, make an establishment with them. And whenever you can't find the stuff in the grocery store, you don't need to worry because you have your supply locked down. Now, I know a lot of other people will tell you, well, you need to buy a product, right? Here's freeze-dried product. You can stack it for 25 years, 30 years, whatever the time period is. And that's great, I guess, but I'm not going to sell you freeze-dried product. I'm also not going to sell you on a subscription service from a third party that's going to be the intermediary between you and the farmer that's producing your meat. Instead, I'm going to recommend that you find the farmer yourself and make that connection yourself. And that way it's between you and that farmer, between your family and that farmer. And you don't have to worry about what comes down the pike later on whenever things change. And yeah, that could be a CSA program. CSA programs, I really wish I could highlight stuff in StreamYard, but it's all locked up for me. Zasper has to say CSA is the way to go. The CSA program absolutely is a great way to go. You really do want to support these sorts of programs because this is the local food that is nearby where you happen to live. And if you cannot, for some reason, supply that food yourself, you're going to have to get it from somewhere. If it's not coming from the supermarket, you're going to have to get it from somewhere. So definitely get in touch with local farmers. All right. Carolyn Smith's Food Forest and Homestead said, why use StreamYard? Usually because it works really good. It allows me to use the green screen in the background. I've got other little animations and things that I can use out of StreamYard that whenever they're working properly. Lets me do fun things like, I can put this thing up. Right? There we go. Stuff like that. Oh my goodness. I can upload a different logo. Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that out later. They've made some changes in StreamYard apparently, and I don't know how to manage all of them just yet. There's a little help button here that says having issues, and whenever we're done with the stream, I'll probably click on that and talk to somebody and get it straightened out. But I don't want to keep you guys held up while I'm doing IT troubleshooting. That would just be unfair. There we go. So yeah, Melody was mentioning Maui. If you notice at the top of the chat over here on the side, it's going to say Maui Fire Relief Fund. This is the Fire Relief Fund page that was suggested by the Hawaiian royal family. That's right. Hawaii actually does have a monarchy. It's a displaced monarchy. They got annexed by the United States several years ago. But they have managed to maintain a monarchy with all the official roles, in any case, filled by the indigenous people of Hawaii since then. So the actual Hawaiians are the people getting served by this particular fire relief fund. I don't know who is being served by the other ones. Maybe those are good too. But this one specifically is the one that was endorsed by the, I don't know if you call it the legitimate government, but the government of Hawaii. In other words, the government of the Hawaiian people, since they actually have their own. Yeah, and oh shoot, I should probably get you a link for that. Other than that particular site. If you were ever interested, why is it popping up over here? I may have too many websites open. Here we go. Do I want to just share this? I might. We'll just share this. We're going to deviate from program for just a second. I'm gonna drop the link. There's the website. It's crownofhawaii.com. I'll go to share screen. There we go. It's the official website of the Hawaiian royal family. Is that not cool or what? All right, so here we are. We got a splash page with all our information here. There's the tab here for the Maui Fire Relief Fund, press releases, up to date press releases on what's going on here in Hawaii. So, if you wanted to look at the treaty between the Kingdom of Hawaii and the United States. Also, there's the tab here on the United States acknowledging the illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom and fraudulent annexation by the United States of America. If you're interested in all of that stuff, that's all there. There's the portraits of the current sovereign, and this is the first one of this particular bloodline. What had happened along the it's in here. Is it here? All right. So I think it was this one here, Lydia Kamakahea was the queen during the time that the annexation occurred. And then whenever there was no heir at the time, the crown was passed on through royal proclamation, and the eligible heir was Elizabeth. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, but you'll recognize the last name, Lana Nui. That's the area of Maui that just got burned. This was their stomping grounds. That particular branch of the Hawaiian royal family was from there. This is a horrible thing that happened out that way. Just horrible. So you can go through here and read up on all of the monarchs that Hawaii has had down through the years, up to the point where they started having treaty agreements with the United States, and then where things went, I guess you could say, wrong, because Hawaii is treated as one of the states of the United States and not as a sovereign kingdom, which it is, or it's supposed to be. I guess whenever you got enough guns and nobody wants to fight you, you can get away with anything, right? All right. Let's close that out. That's so sad to think about. All right. Let's see. Faith is taking off. Good night, Faith. All right. So, how about you and I? Should we move? How about out of a state or out of a country? Maybe it's not enough to just move outside the city. Maybe we need to move out of the state. What do you think? Some things that I've got a couple thoughts on this. About once or twice a year, I look around the house and I realize that it's a pigsty. Now, it's a pigsty pretty much all the time. I got to let you know right now, I am not a good housekeeper. But sometimes I'm just truly aghast at just how badly I've let things go and how things have piled up. And usually it's clutter. It's not necessarily a bunch of trash. There's trash mixed in with the clutter too, because like I said, I'm a horrible housekeeper. I like to get started on projects, and I'll be fiddling around with something, and I'll put it down, and then I'll get interested in something else, and I go pick it up, kind of like a kid with ADHD. And maybe that's the problem. I'll pick up these things, and I'll have a half a dozen projects at any given time. And sometimes there'll be one over here and one over here, one over here. And you ever notice that sometimes I just reach over and I'm able to pick up something weird and just show it off. It's not because I brought it in and was intending upon showing it off. It's just because it happened to be here. What is this? Oh, it's got some mycorrhizal inoculant powder sitting over here next to an amplifier that I never use. Anyway, I have all these things, and they just sit around and they clutter, and it gets bad. And the house is a pit. It's a mess, and it needs to be cleaned. That's the thing. When your house is dirty, it needs to be cleaned. It doesn't mean that you need to pack up and move. But a lot of people, whenever they come to the realization, they look around. Whenever you look around, you go, oh my goodness, this place where I'm living, the state where I'm living, or the country where I'm living, it's getting bad. Maybe I should move to someplace else. Well, if it's that bad, then yeah, maybe you should. If there's not a possibility that you can do anything about the situation where you are to improve things, then it would be in your best interest to relocate. However, if it's in the it's getting bad portion of this descent, if it's in the getting bad portion, then maybe you shouldn't be moving. Maybe you should be thinking about cleaning house. Maybe you should be thinking about how is it that I can affect where I live and make it better. And maybe that affects not a whole lot, but the effect of one person is a positive effect, and one person affects two. Two people affect four. Four people affect eight. And now I've run out of fingers. Just being present and being a positive example in your community can make one heck of a lot of difference. See, leadership is not an elected position. There are a lot of people who get elected that call themselves leaders. They're not leaders. They manage to win an election by one way or another. I'm not necessarily saying that all of them won it fair and square, if you know what I mean. We've had problems and issues and questions about that this entire time. Leadership is not an elected position. In order to be a leader, you have to be out there and be visible and be doing the things that people look at and go, I like that. I want to emulate that. That's being a leader. Maybe that means you're the person that is going out there and planting a garden very clearly and obviously and visibly and telling everybody about your garden. And maybe you're taking the fruits and vegetables around and sharing them with the neighbors and saying, wouldn't it be nice that if you had a garden too? You can slowly and surely work your way to pricking the conscience of your neighbors, so they start doing more things to become self-reliant. You don't have to go out and enforce all of natural law all over the world. You don't have to enforce it all over your neighborhood. You don't even have to enforce it all over your house. How about just to the reach of your arms? Everything within the reach of my arms, within my arm's reach, everything here is going to be ordered and decent, structured according to natural law. That's a lot easier to manage than saying, well, I'm going to go try to fix the whole world. You don't have to fix the whole world. You just have to fix what's between your own ears and then act accordingly. And whenever you do this, whenever you show yourself as an example that people can look up to, and they will. Decent, honorable behavior is often admired. And when it becomes easy to emulate, it's emulatable. I'm not saying that people need to do anything extreme either. There's a lot of concern these days about possibly a civil war. Oh no. In a way, I think we're already involved in one. But it's not the kind of war where people are lining up and shooting at each other. It's not a two-way rifle range sort of thing. Now, granted, yeah, in some cases it is. There are people that get swatted. There are people that have charges filed against them for political purposes, whether there's crimes behind them or not, real crimes behind them or not. In some cases there are, some cases there aren't. It's going to be really difficult in the days ahead if you're a partisan type of person to continue to engage in civil discourse. That's why I'm kind of glad I'm not a partisan. I don't have a dog in this particular fight. I have a love of my country and I have a love of law, real law, not not the fake stuff. I think maybe that's where we come together. Us normal people, or at least more or less normal people, not because of what we hate, but because of what we love. We love decency and we love order. We love peace. We love our families. We love our friends. We love our neighborhoods. We love our country. And there are forces out there that want to make us hate. They want to divide us. They've had an easy time dividing us too, up to a certain point. Up to a certain point, they've had an easy time. They divide us all different kinds of ways, don't they? They divide us on race. They divide us on our political outlook. They give us a choice of two masters to pick, this team or that team. Oh, don't worry about those third party candidates, the libertarians, green parties, whoever else happens to show up. We don't need to worry about them. They're never going to win anyway. Focus your attention over here or over here so you can be on the winning side. Everybody wants to be on the winning side. The thing is, what are you winning? What are you winning? And more of us are waking up and realizing, just like John said, both teams suck. The teams suck. It'd be nice if they stood for principles, but whenever they get into those elected positions, they're all too ready to compromise. Well, if the principles were important, why are they compromising? Right? Folks are all eager to go vote for their team, vote for their team. It doesn't matter whether that's necessarily a good person that they're voting for. Only that they're voting for their team. And so by standing on the outside of things, and I'm looking over here, I look at Trump, okay? I can see a whole lot of things that Trump has done wrong. Incidentally, not a whole lot of they're trying to indict him for. And I can see a whole lot of things that Biden and his family have done wrong as well. I am not blind to the crimes being committed on all sides of the political spectrum. It seems to me that the entire government is just riddled with criminals. Brian said, I think if the pendulum swings, there'll be more opportunity. There is that hope, right? That if the right people get elected, that maybe we'll get some opportunity and things will change. I've been listening to that hope for about 50 years now. And it hasn't happened. Unfortunately. Every now and then we get some good people elected to office. We do, every now and then. Here and there. I was talking to an insider a few days ago, and they confided in me that the the number of psychopaths involved in government on the national level. This is just, well, just from what they could observe, was right around 95%. And that might seem like a high number of psychopaths being in charge, but keep in mind that the distribution is 3%. And in a country with in a country with over 300 million citizens, 15 million of them being primary psychopaths is a low-end estimate. So we have, 435 congressmen, 100 senators, 9 Supreme Court justices, a president and a vice president. That's our federal level government as far as elected officials goes. It's not getting into department heads or anything. You can do whatever you want to with the department heads if you can manage to get a hold of the executive branch, right? So 435, 535, 537 plus another 9. What was that? 556 some odd people being influenced by 15 million psychopaths. Or those offices are held by psychopaths in 95% of the cases. And yet we wonder, right, why it seems like constantly we have criminal action coming from government. John says we must be our own leaders. Well, right. Whenever you look around and you go, where's the leader? Where's the leader? I know we need a leader. Well, sometimes that means, hey, guess what? It's going to be you. Congratulations. You get to be a leader. The good news is hopefully you don't have to be up there bleeding by yourself for long. Hopefully, right? And I'll address what Carolyn just said in a moment. Hopefully you don't have to be out there leading by yourself for long. Quite often, whenever a group of people, whenever they're standing around waiting for somebody to do something, people get locked into this position, right? We have 10 people, something's going on, the 10 people stand around and go, input, 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 what am I supposed to do here? The thought of, well, I'm an individual, I have free will and choice, and I can choose to do certain things. I have agency, I can take action and make a correct decision. It never occurs to them. They're waiting for someone to tell them what to do. That's the way people have been programmed. It's the way they've been indoctrinated. I don't expect that to change overnight. Now, with proper education, if we start raising our children properly, raising them to take initiative, raising them to ask first, well, what is it that I can do to better my situation, instead of saying, well, what can somebody else come along and do for me? It's a big difference right there. As that takes place, as that change happens over several generations, then yeah, we will get to a point where it becomes a lot easier. But here initially, people will be standing around waiting to be told what to do. And if the thing that needs to be done is help that woman who's being assaulted, right? It only takes one person standing up and going, oh my goodness, there's a woman being assaulted right in front of us. I'm going to do something about it. And if one person is willing to step in there and do something about it, chances are there's probably going to be 2 or 3 other people in that crowd that goes, you know what? I don't want to be embarrassed that I'm the only person that's not actually stepping up and doing the right thing also here. And they'll come along for the ride. And pretty soon you have an entire group of people gathered together that are engaging in the enforcement of natural law. And the enforcement of natural law does not mean that you have to go and engage in violence and attack people. Quite often, the only thing that needs to be done is for a person to look the other person in the eye that's thinking about doing something that they know they shouldn't be doing and saying, dude, you know that's not right. And just looking them in the eye and say, dude, no, that's not right, right? Don't be lame. Don't be one of those people. Come on now. And that simple act, just engaging and talking to people who are on the cusp of committing crimes and acting inappropriately, is quite often enough to stop them. And then sometimes you actually do have to resort to force. But I can tell you, I have stopped robberies twice. I've stopped 2 robberies, 2 burglaries, by confronting the people involved. In both cases, I was outnumbered, and delivering just a basic civic responsibility lecture to them. I was armed both times. They didn't know both times. I never once showed the weapon or indicated that I had a weapon on me. It was not necessary to show a weapon or indicate a weapon or threaten violence at all. Just the confrontation, calmly, rationally, looking them dead in the eye and calling them out on their behavior was sufficient. And most of the time it is. And I so wish that I could click on comments from StreamYard and put them up there. I really do need to figure out how to fix that. All right. So going back, yeah, we're going to go back to what Carolyn said here. She said, sometimes I just think that the world would be better off if we get a CME. There will be no more internet, no more televisions, etc. Yes, it will be difficult because there will also be no electricity, but the world will be more simple. And I wanted to address that particular sentiment because I've had the same thought quite a few times. Actually, when I first got out of the Navy, this was 1991. I got out just after the Persian excursion. We got back, and I was stationed in California. I got out of California and out of the West Coast as fast as I possibly could, because even back then, it was clear to me that things were nuts on the West Coast. People are just not normal at all. I don't know how to live amongst crazy people. It doesn't work well for me. I don't comprehend it. I don't know how to sit here and watch people be insane without looking at them saying, pardon me, are you okay? There's something not connecting upstairs. Do you want me to get some help for you or something? I kind of want to make sure that people are okay. And that doesn't go over well in these cities. You're told to mind your own business, of course. So I retreated back here to the middle of the country, where people are at least somewhat sane. But back then, I wanted to hightail it out of civilization, head up to Alaska, start a homestead, and do stuff like that. I got into researching it, researched everything I could about homesteading. You had to go to the library, of course. Back then, we didn't have all this internet back then. You couldn't type in a keyword, do a search, and get the entire world of information at your fingertips. You had to actually physically go to the library. So I spent a lot of time at the library. Eventually, I came to understand that if I relocated to Alaska for about maybe 3 to 4 months out of the year, I would be eaten alive by biting flies and mosquitoes. I don't like biting flies and mosquitoes. I don't like them one bit. And unfortunately, it's the time of the year that you have to be outside doing things that are important to maintaining your homestead. So if I was going to be obliged to be eaten alive by insects, if I was going to try to make a living in Alaska as a homesteader, I decided that maybe I wasn't that interested in living in Alaska after all, because I don't like cold either, come to think of it. So 6 months out of the year when it's dark and it's cold, and then maybe 3 months out of the year you're getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, and another 3 months out of the year that things are more or less okay. 3 months of more or less okay is not enough. It's not enough time for me. So I gave up on the idea of relocating to Alaska as a homesteader and decided to set my sights on something a little bit more attainable. But that meant we're going to have to come up with money for property, because you can't just go and file a homestead claim anywhere else in the country. I guess you can't do that in Alaska now either. Back then you could. In any case, way back when I learned about coronal mass ejections. And once I learned about coronal mass ejections, That really started me on prepping, because I realized that this is something that is naturally occurring. It's somewhat unpredictable, but generally cyclical. In other words, every few hundred years or so, maybe, we don't really know, because we haven't been observing coronal mass ejections for a few hundred years. We only have a few instances um, that we've experienced one here on Earth, several times that we've been able to observe them with our instruments in space watching the sun, where they didn't hit the Earth. Um, but as far as what they can do, we kind of have an idea that if we get hit by a sizable one at the right time, we'll go back to the 1800s rather quickly. And we won't come back from that level of technology anytime soon. Coronal mass ejection is a superheated, well, I guess it's not even superheated because it's in space, uh, a highly energetic cloud of plasma. We'll put it that way. So this the corona of the sun is plasma, a state of matter that's not gaseous and it's not liquid either. It's supercritical gas that behaves like a liquid, would be a way of putting it, because of the high density of the sun. So we have a very energetic plasma discharge coming from the corona of the sun that comes flying out into space. And if it comes to Earth, will interact with our ionosphere. When it interacts with our ionosphere, that's the electromagnetic flux that's created by Earth that has poles. One of the planets that has, another planet has a magnetic field. All right. So whenever this plasma interacts with our ionosphere, it creates a long duration electromagnetic pulse here on the ground, and also in the immediate area of space above us, etc., etc. This will fry satellites if they're close enough. It may burn transmission lines, power transmission lines. It's possible that some electronics gear may be damaged by a CME. Electronics gear is more likely to be damaged by an electromagnetic pulse from, say, an airburst nuclear weapon than a coronal mass ejection. Coronal mass ejection is just more likely to mess up the power transformers that keep the entire power grid functioning for extended periods of time, and those are not easy to replace. They would take years for them to replace enough of the power grid to get most of the country back up and running. And by years, we mean years and years. Assuming, of course, that the places that manufacture them could even manufacture them anymore after the CME. We would essentially have to go back and rebuild the entire technology tree from the ground up, which has been done in the past and done rather rapidly. However, for all of the people that are dependent upon the functioning electrical power grid the way it is now, they're going to have just a horrible time of it. The estimation is, probably around 90% of the population will not make it in the case of a coronal mass ejection. And it's something that we have no control over. We have no control over what the sun does. We can work out agreements with rivals on Earth, with people we have disagreements with. We can absolutely stop violent aggression against each other on Earth. That's completely human controlled. We can do that, but we can't stop the sun. And so eventually, at some point in the future, we will have a coronal mass ejection that will hit the planet Earth, and the effects of it are either going to be catastrophic for a civilization, or it's going to be, oh, hey, we got some pretty lights in the sky. Let's enjoy this this opportunity while everything resets itself. It really is a question of what kind of preparations we make now. It's also one of the reasons why I decided when I was going to start my prepping journey that everything needed to be analog. Everything needed to be manual. And by manual, I mean completely manual. We've got our wood stove over here. We've got right now I only have one. I need to get a backup for the pump. We've got a manual cast iron pump. This thing is nice. I got it from Layman's. If you follow Green Greg's website, or back to his channel, in channel links, he has an affiliate with Layman's. So if you want to go shop Layman's for water pumps, go to Greg's channel first and follow his link to Layman's. That way he can get a couple pennies whenever you buy one of these. Really, really, really nice manual water pumps from Layman's. So we got one of those. I got spare parts for it. So if it fails for any reason, I can dig into my parts bag. I can pull out the parts, grab a chunk of leather, cut out a replacement for that valve if I need to, so I have another backup later on, and I can replace those parts. They're actually made of leather. The replacements are. So if I can get my hands on hides that I can cure to make leather, and I can do that. I did a lot of that when I was a kid. We had cattle among other things, and we did have to tan hides sometimes. I can always make further replacements for the seals on that pump. I just need to get another pump or two. Let's see. So I've got water. I've got heat. Wait a minute. That stove, it burns wood. Where am I going to get the wood from? It's not like I can go and get replacement gasoline for my chainsaw if something were to happen. Well, I saw sharpening tools. I went ahead and I got manual crosscut saws, so I can manage taking care of fell trees, dead wood, and things of that nature. Not terrific for trying to cut down anything more than about 8 or 9 inches across. Well, that's probably more like a foot. Not really good for cutting down anything much bigger than that by yourself, but you can definitely manage to cut some firewood with this thing. And of course, got the splitting mauls, splitting wedges. Speaking of how I like to keep things within arm's length, I just happened to have one right down here at my feet, along with, I don't know what else I've got down here. Well, odds and ends. I think this is some EV batteries and stuff that I need to take out there and put together with a solar setup. But definitely, Greg said definitely get your manual hand tools. Manual hand tools will save you a world of grief. And I try to get used to using them on a regular basis. If there's a reason why I need to use a power tool, just to speed things along, sure, I'll use the power tool. But if it's something that I need to do one of, then I'll just grab the hand tool. It won't make as much noise. Won't disturb the neighbors. I can do my work in the morning before the neighbors even up, before 9 o'clock. I try not to fire up any machinery before 9 because he's older than I am. He's on a CPAP machine. He doesn't sleep all that great to begin with. And so if I can avoid keeping him up past his bedtime or waking him up before he's ready, I'd rather do that. Because who knows, 10 years from now I'll be his age. Hopefully I won't be on the CPAP machine, because that thing looks like torture. It really does. I had several occasions when I was working on the grape arbor over there that it was still early in the morning when I got out there, and I did the work with a mallet and chisel, and didn't break out any power tools at all. It was somewhat rewarding. But it's also good to do projects like that periodically, because it means that you can build confidence in those tools and your ability to use them in an emergency situation. If you've got something that you've picked up and go, well, I have this thing, but I've never used it. For example, I got these tomato seeds. I've got these tomato seeds, but if I've never planted this particular variety of tomatoes, right? If I've never planted them before, if I've never grown them here, and this is an heirloom brandywine, but it was grown in Missouri, a little bit different climate than here in Oklahoma. They do grow okay, but they're not perfectly adapted to here. I'd be better off growing a tomato of a variety that I've been growing for several years in the same location for several reasons. First off, if it's a variety that's just not going to grow well in the soil type that I have, in the growing conditions I have to begin with, I need to know that before I'm depending upon that for food. And the other part of it is, if it's a variety that I'm growing here and I can get fruit from it reliably, then the seeds that I plant are also going to be adapted and get me fruit from it more reliably as the years go by. The more practice I get, not only do the seeds get better, but I get better at learning how to grow where I'm at. Greg is saying it's out by Jasmine. Oh, we're looking at that. Well, I was looking at the potential travel routes, and one way you could come through here. Uh, Craig can't text. One way you could get from Alabama to here is to take I-40 straight across. And whenever you get to Henrietta, you just hop onto 75 north and head straight north. It'll take you up to Tulsa. That'll take you about an hour out of your way. But the other way of going is to depart, and you're on 40 for just a minute, and then you're going to run up to 60. And I-60 will take you across a little bit north and through Springfield, Missouri. It's a little bit more scenic route. And then it'll pass through Tulsa. And then once you leave Tulsa, you get on 44. 44 will take you southwest, reconnects with I-40. And I estimate that probably take maybe a total of an hour and a half off the trip, as opposed to just going straight on I-40 all the way through to Arizona. So it's 1.5 to 2 hours extra travel time, plus the visit. But I could hand you a whole bunch of corn seeds. I think the corn that we've got up on the porch right now is about ready to start taking off the cob and packing it up. And I will buy lunch too. We've got a fairly nice steakhouse in Sand Springs that's good to go to. There's a Mexican place called El Majue, which has the most delicious tacos al pastor you have ever had in your entire life. Either one of those is good. Sassafras is saying if you take the 60, you can stop and check out Baker Creek main store too. Sassafras saying, let's all go to Jason's. I might organize a work party here. I might organize a work party here in another year or two. Possibly something in the winter also. I've been thinking about having sort of a jamboree, and Tulsa's not too bad a location. It's fairly central, easy for people to get to. Somewhere around November, December or so, except for Sassafras. He'll be busy working. Somewhere around November or December. We've got a place called Mohawk Park. It's next to the Tulsa Zoo. Don't worry, the smell of the animals doesn't get out to the park. It's far enough away that even on days when it's downwind, you won't smell the lion cage. But Mohawk Park has these wonderful pavilions with big fire pits in them that you can put tarps up around whenever the weather's really particularly bad. So you could be in the middle of a blizzard and have a get-together out there, and everybody will stay nice and cozy and warm. And it's just a great way to have a cookout in the middle of the winter, when hopefully nobody who is actually doing homesteading is too incredibly nobody's in homesteading is too incredibly busy with the work of homesteading, except for the people that are in the middle of having their goats kids. Sometimes, we'd have to work around the kidding schedule, right? That's plus or minus, depending. You might have to just make it a short trip. In any case, the thing that's just annoyed me about most of these homesteading conferences and get-togethers is just the timing is horrible. Sazgraz is saying that his great-grandfather used manure from the circus to fertilize his garden. I'll bet that lion manure kept the rabbits out and the deer and everything else. So before we have a work party, I'd like to have a regular party, like maybe some sort of a winter jamboree, like the old mountain men used to have. We get together, we'll sit down, we'll have some cider, and we'll swap stories and cook a few steaks if there's still steaks to be had by then. If not, we could probably work up something in the way of a sausage, right? Just don't ask too many questions. I thought that might be fun to do. But later on, and this may be a few years from now, um, how do I put this sensitively? Later on, when Mary inherits her mother's house, that's a sensitive way of putting it. Um, when Mary inherits her mom's house, we're gonna need to do some work over there. The house itself is in terrible repair. You may catch sight of it from time to time in videos. It's the one that's on the north side of the property, and you'll notice whenever we pan across it that the guttering has come off of the roof, and I do need to get up there and finish taking it down. You might also notice that the roof kind of waffles a bit. That's because the decking up there has crumbled, and it's likely to cave in sometime if we go up there on the roof and start walking around. The bathroom has collapsed into, well, below the foundation. Let's see what else. There was a fire in the kitchen. It needs to be completely. If you're going to try to do anything with it, it would need to be completely redone. But then again, the old iron pipe that runs underneath it would need to be completely replaced, and the central furnace that it has is not functioning either. So everything in that house, from the roof to the foundation, needs to be replaced. So if you're going to replace everything from the roof to the foundation, it's going to be cheaper to just tear the entire thing down and start over. That way you have a new construction that has some longevity, rather than a repair job that's going to have to be addressed again in just a few years. Um, the windows are worth saving. It has intact windows. Other than that, no. I don't even think the water heater functions properly. It just Margaret was she was reluctant to ask for help whenever she needed help. That's incidentally how she wound up injuring herself and going to the nursing home. She was on new medication for her blood pressure. It was causing her to have spells where she was falling down. She didn't say, "Hey, I need help getting my groceries," or anything like that. And so she went off on her own to Walmart to go get her groceries. Winds up falling down at the Walmart, broke her arm. I believe it was on her right side, on her right arm, and she also fractured her back. She dismissed the back fracture. Oh, it's not that bad. It's a back fracture. Within a week, she was unable to walk, and of course, she hasn't walked since. She hasn't been able to stand up or walk since. She's too big for me to be able to pick up and put on the toilet every time. Not to mention, there's the back problem, which, that one person trying to muscle you up out of bed to the toilet so you can go to the bathroom doesn't help with the back either. So there was one particular point where she didn't have any sensation in her feet at all, wasn't able to help out at all, and just complete dead weight flopped straight on down to the floor. And I couldn't get her back up by myself. She's too big, too heavy. So we had to call out the fire department to get her up and out. And she's not been able to be home since, because it does require at least two people to move her around. So now she's in the nursing home with a broken back that's never going to heal properly, and she's never going to walk again. And she'll have to be in a bed for the rest of her life. So, moral of the story is, take care of your elders, and also if you're one of the elders and you need help, ask for help. Really, ask for help. Because the injuries that you will cause to yourself trying to get along without the help whenever you need it will mean that you require even more help later on. So it's so much better to just go, hey, you youngsters, you've got good backs. You wouldn't mind going and grabbing the groceries for me. Here's a list. And if the kid's worth their salt at all, they're going to go, sure, Mom, not a problem. And they'll go take care of that for you. Jasper has to say, stay in the foundation in one wall. Here's what we're thinking about doing. We're thinking about tearing the entire thing down, all the way down. And if possible, taking out all the pipes going out to the street as well. Take it all the way down to bare ground. digging a new well for that side, and setting up a greenhouse where the regular house is. And the greenhouse I have envisioned is something that's big enough to accommodate trees on the inside. So we could have orange trees in Oklahoma, like real citrus fruit, zone 10 environment, vanilla orchids, things like that. I would like to have an office built into the greenhouse and a bathroom facility with a shower. So you have a bathroom and an office. And yeah, if necessary, you could even set up a cot inside the greenhouse and you could sleep in the greenhouse if you wanted to, which might be an interesting experience to wake up in the morning and reach up and grab an orange right out of bed and start peeling your breakfast as you get up and come around. Saspress is asking, could I put a septic tank under the greenhouse as a cistern? I most likely would not use a septic tank. I think we would be moving to a composting toilet system. We have a septic tank now, right? And we may keep that for a while. I don't know how long we'll keep this house. If we can get a functioning greenhouse that also has living quarters in it, and I'm thinking about designing the greenhouse with living quarters in it. It may not look like Greg's universal habitat idea, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that there's a bit of that concept worked into it. Because just the idea of living in a greenhouse appeals to me. When I was a toddler, when I was in my playpen, my mother worked at the I can't remember what the name of the greenhouse was, Spring Hills, I think. But she was working at a greenhouse as a part-time job, finishing up her master's degree. She was planning on going back to work as a school teacher. Yeah, it does resemble the universal habitat. Point being, I was in a greenhouse when I was very, very young. When I was unable to talk and walk really yet, I was in a greenhouse, and the smell of a greenhouse just really puts me in my happy place. Like I'm a child again. It's just wonderful. So the idea of being able to live inside one, just like a dream come true for me. The thought I had was, we take probably half of the space underneath that, right? Half the space under. And we excavate down and create a very, very large reservoir. And this would be where we have our fish. Here in Oklahoma, it's kind of hard to maintain 55 degrees with uncovered surface water without a heater. However, if your tilapia pond is inside your greenhouse, under the floor of your greenhouse, completely surrounded by your greenhouse, and you're trying to maintain a zone 10 atmosphere inside the greenhouse, then you're going to be able to maintain that 55 degree. You're going to be able to maintain that 55 degree or minimum water temperature and keep tilapia growing throughout the winter months. So that's an option for protein that we don't really have right now, because we'd have to find some way to keep the water warm. We can grow catfish. That's not a problem. We could go crappie. That's not a problem. But right now, without a heater, that's kind of what we're limited to for food fish. Yeah, we could grow. I kind of like the idea of having long-eared sunfish just because they're fun to catch. But those are more of a feeder fish for bigger things. Tilapia, on the other hand, I can feed them duckweed directly, and duckweed grows great here. I can feed them the duckweed directly, and then that gives me a food fish that we can eat. Brian's saying the greenhouse in Minnesota in winter is a sun therapy room. Hey, you guys saw that one up in Nebraska, right? Geoshelter greenhouse with a heat exchanger connects to the house, so it not only is it keeping the area where the plants are warm, it's also helping to keep the house warm, which is pretty cool. Okay. Anyway, half of this tilapia pond inside the greenhouse. The other half of it, I'm thinking about making that the area where we keep our thermal battery. And by thermal battery, I mean literally a thermal battery. We heat up water by a number of different methods. First off, across the roof, across the peak, the ridge of the greenhouse is one area where we have pipes circulating water because it gets really, really hot up there. Automatically, it gets really hot up there. If you don't have vents up there at the top of your of your greenhouse to pull that hot air out during the hot days, it will get cooking hot inside your greenhouse. And even if you just have a poly sheet over some cattle panels, it can get hot enough to cook with. It's oven hot on a good warm spring day. You don't want that. You have to have ventilation. But you can also have your one stage of your water heating running across that ridge. You can go ahead and put up solar water heaters across the top above that as well, and in other locations. Let's see. What else can we do for heat? Well, we've got our wood burning stove. Once again, we can capture heat from the wood burning stove, heat it up with the stove, possibly using a rocket mass heater, and use that to charge the thermal battery. And all the thermal battery is an insulated reservoir using aerosolized concrete on the walls, at least a foot, maybe even a little bit thicker, sealed so that the water cannot get in or out. But that layer of aerosolized concrete provides sufficient insulation that you can have temperatures in excess of 1,000 degrees on one side and it'll still be nice and cool on the other. So if you can imagine, you're pumping your hot water into this reservoir, you're holding it in this reservoir until it's time for you to use it. And you use it to operate thermoelectric generator circuits. You use it to provide you with heat if you need heat. So you have solar heat for water that you're storing in a thermal battery. And also you can run your stove to heat water to store in the thermal battery. So whenever you need heat for either generating electricity or for warming the area, you have heat on demand. Fun stuff. And I still need to do an awful lot of work with the thermoelectric generators to make that work. I need to come up with a prototype of that thermal battery and how it functions together. You will need some. You're still going to need some batteries, right? Some things like that to operate your pumps. Once your pumps get going and start pulling the hot water on one side and cold water on the other side of a thermoelectric generator, it'll be producing the electricity that you need to recharge the batteries to operate the pumps. All that wonderful stuff. Maybe add a hot tub. Yeah. It's hard to, yeah, I'm backtracking on the chat here. Greg is saying, build a new one because repair jobs are up. Whenever you wind up ultimately spending as much or more doing a repair job, then you would spend to build something brand new. And if you're building brand new, you can build it to specifications. You can make it to the point where you don't have problems like these particular houses have. These houses were not built with the idea of ease of maintenance. That wasn't the thought in mind whenever they built it. This house is built in a similar fashion to the one next door. They didn't even add insulation. Oh, good. They put a roof on. I'm glad they didn't overlook that part. They were in a hurry to put these up. And as a result, whenever it comes time to do repairs, I discovered that there's not convenient cutoff valves for things. Pipes are not easy to access. I have to do excavation to get to pipes. And I've got old iron pipe that's starting to rust. Eventually, it'll need to be replaced. And that means I'm going to have to dig tunnels under the entire house in order to get to them. This is the kind of work that most contractors are not eager to do. So I'm either going to have to pay a lot for it or I'm going to have to do it myself. And actually, I do kind of like the idea of digging tunnels under my house. I might work in a root cellar while I'm at it, make it worth my while. But whenever it comes time to demolish that house next door, yeah, maybe a work party. We get a bunch of people together to come out and have a barn raising or raising RAZ. If we could tear it down, we'll go ahead and lease the necessary dumpsters and see what a dozen people with crowbars and hammers can accomplish in a weekend. Patricia's saying that vanilla needs a specific bee. Well, it's a wasp, really, for pollination. Um, what you do in that particular case, seeing as we do not happen to have the wasp here, is to be silly and leave that particular brush somewhere else. Okay, I usually use a cosmetics brush, but this was sitting here, so I'll use it. I've got silly stuff. You take a brush and pardon me, this will work. You come up to your flower and you take the pollen from the male flower on your brush. And you come to the other flower. You're going to go to the stamens there. You got the pollen on your brush, and you brush the stamens, and you pollinate your orchid, your vanilla bean orchid. So you're doing the work of the wasp since you don't have the wasp. I'd have to do the same thing with the bottle gourds on the front porch. The light keeps the moth that ordinarily would pollinate those. I know, weird. The light distracts them. Instead of going to the flowers, they go to the light, and the flowers don't get pollinated. Where I have them growing up in trees, it's dark enough that it doesn't distract the moths. They home in, they find the flowers, and do what they're supposed to do, and they get pollinated. But on the porch, if I don't manually pollinate them, I don't get any bottle gourds on the porch. I've got 6 bottle gourds on the porch. So manual pollination, it does work. And yes, it works on vanilla beans too. It's what everybody does if you don't happen to live in an area where the wasp is. And some people that raise the vanilla orchid to sell vanilla beans specifically will go ahead and hand pollinate anyway, despite the fact that they may have that wasp living close by. All right, Sassafras Bread is heading to bed because bridges never sleep. Oh yeah. See, guys, if you're doing a heavy construction project, you want Sassafras Bread on your team. And Greg's talking about doing a video when he gets here. That would be cool. That would be incredibly cool. I want to do a couple videos with you. I said a while back that we should probably do something where we get together and talk about worms, because it seems that there's some academic laziness going on with regards to night crawlers, and the idea that North America lost its night crawler population during the Ice Age. Whenever I think about that and I look at the ice limit, I'm having a hard time seeing it. Because once you look at those maps and you see where the ice sheet came down to, and you think about what the climate would be like in the rest of the continental United States, it would be strange. It would be very strange that North America would lose its indigenous worm population, because most of the country was ice free. During the peak of glaciation, most of the country was ice free. So this concept that people had, that the entire planet is covered with ice during the Ice Age. This is the image from a child's cartoon. The entire planet was not covered with ice during the Ice Age. There were large portions of land that were open, that were warm. They had all 4 seasons. People were living on them, and that means that the earthworms could have been living on them too. Greg's saying maybe the impact on the Laurentide ice sheet might have done them. Well, there would be nothing living at all on the area that was completely covered by the Laurentide ice sheet. Some places, I think, was a mile thick. So as it's retreating, it's scraping, right? Scraping nothing but barren rock, a little bit of moraine, dirt left behind. Then there's the flash flooding whenever the crater lakes were emptied, just scouring the earth. Everything left behind from Kansas north, although up to 2 miles thick. Okay, I stand corrected. Although the coasts were clear. So all the way up to Maine and all the way up to Alaska was clear at the glacial limit, although the ice did come down to Kansas. So down to Kansas, kind of a big U, and up to 2 miles thick. Whenever that retreated, everything that was in the zone that was covered by ice, everything was bare. There wasn't grass growing there. There weren't trees there. There weren't blueberries there. There wasn't reindeer moss there. There wasn't sphagnum moss there. There weren't reindeer there. There weren't bears there. There weren't fish there. There was nothing there. Everything that has come along and populated this area that was covered by the glaciers during the Ice Age, from Kansas north all the way up to the Arctic Circle now, everything that came along there has come along since. What does that mean? Well, that means that it's non-native. So the only thing that's native there is bare rock. Everything that's living. All the bears were in Alabama, and some of them didn't leave. Everything that's there is non-native. So for a person to stand here now and go, okay, I see that there's something coming up from the south, and it's coming up to our borders, and it's going to wind up crossing our borders, and it's going to be in our state, or it's going to be in Canada. It's going to be intermingling with the things that are here already. It's not native, therefore it must be bad. We want to stop it and get rid of it. Well, every single pioneering species that's come in, transforming this barren rock that's been scraped clean by glaciers, is not native. What are we supposed to do? Scrape it all off to bare rock again and stand here with a sour look on our face saying, no, we're not going to let this landscape change, ever. It's silly and it's ridiculous on its face. The entire premise is wrong. The entire premise is wrong because it's impossible to support this theory that North America had lost its indigenous worm population. The fact that you can look at an earthworm from North America, a nightcrawler, and compare it to one in Europe and say, these are incredibly similar. I believe they share a genetic heritage. Okay, that seems reasonable. Now the question is, did the worm come from Europe to North America, or did perhaps the worm come from North America to Europe? See, here's the thing. People are very, very eager to say white man brought the earthworm with them whenever they came over from Europe, and they brought with the food and the vegetables and everything that they brought with them. They transported the earthworm here. It's invasive because it came from Europe, and it has replaced the native earthworm that America had. Or, as the one guy says, well, America didn't have any worms, right? Which didn't seem very, very, very reasonable. Just a quick question, but does this mean that we are not going to pay attention to the stories of the indigenous people that were here in North America that claim that their ancestors arrived here on boats? You see, according to them, they immigrated here a long, long time ago, well before the modern Europeans ever got here. And that means that people came here from Europe. They came here from Asia. They came here from South Asia. The Polynesian boat peoples got all the way around the world. They picked up potatoes Solanum tuberosa, and they picked up the Ipomea batatas, the sweet potato, regular potatoes. They picked those up in South America. They dropped off chickens, and they wound up circulating chickens and sweet potatoes all around the world. In the process, you don't think so possibly if they're moving agricultural products and soil around, that they may have moved their worms around. So the Polynesian jungle worm winds up in the American continents. It wasn't brought here by Europeans. It wasn't even brought here during a period that we even have a historical record. It's old, and it's been here. It's been here since the time the people got here long ago. From a time whenever they don't even remember when their ancestors got here. It was so long ago. Greg is saying that the Clovis people use spear and arrowhead points like the ones found in France, not Asia. People got around in the ancient world. They really did. When I was about 7 years old, I was sitting in church reading the Bible while the sermon was going on. I was fond of doing that quite often, and occasionally it led to trouble because quite often I would be sitting here reading in context to what was being cherry picked from the pulpit, and I'd say, parents wouldn't let me raise my hand in church because I had some questions. Because what I'm reading here, whenever I read everything in context, doesn't add up with what I'm being told from the pulpit. Well, I got curious about, okay, this is one group of people's idea about God, about the big questions. This is one group of people's idea, but other people have other ideas. So I got interested in the different stories, mythologies, and tales that are told by people from all around the world, and I started studying them. I got into Bullfinch's mythologies that year. I got through Greek and Norse mythology. Within a couple of years, I was looking into Sumerian myth, into Egyptian myth, Native American and African myths, every single culture all over the world, and they all have amazing stories, first off. And they have stories that in a lot of cases overlap, indicating in some cases where people may share a common ancestry or common source where some of these stories come from. And they're changed and they're adapted to fit the cultures and the various locations where they're at. If you're hearing the flood story being told in Babylon, in old Mesopotamia, the hero's name is not going to be Noah, it's going to be Atrahasis. And the type of boat that's going to be built is going to be built by coiling cordage down and weaving reeds together. Entirely different from the version of the ark that's found in Tanakh over here. Entirely different style of construction. And of course, the name of the hero is different depending upon which version of the story that you get. The thing that occurred to me is chances are this story is very, very old indeed. And a lot of the key information, most likely not remembered, and is being passed down orally, as has a tendency to happen when people are suddenly and rapidly displaced and have to move. And apparently a lot of people have been displaced and had to move by these flood events, which may have been one or multiple, I don't know. But the thing that they all have in common is interesting. They all know that everybody had to get into a boat, right? A vessel, a ship of some sort. That they survived the cataclysm on a ship. But the type of ship is going to be exactly like the ships that are built by the people who are telling the story. And the hero is going to be named a name that's familiar to the people who are telling the story. But the story is told all over the world. All over the world. Yeah. And there were impact events that occurred that could have very easily triggered some of these flooding events. So we're looking at what may be the real physical geographic evidence of the flood story, but the stories that the indigenous people have tell us a lot more. They tell us a lot more. If you were listening to the stories of indigenous people in North America, they might tell you about how an angry panther, sky panther, was throwing flaming boulders across the sky, right? And then they tell you about the flooding event. Well, around on the other side of the world, they just tell you about the flood. They wouldn't tell you about the thing that triggered it. But if you have a large impact event where a lot of atmosphere is being displaced, you have a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure. And anybody who's been watching the Weather Channel knows what a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure means. It means it's going to rain. And if it's a big drop in atmospheric pressure, it's probably going to rain a lot. It's probably going to get really cold. And it may interrupt the cycle that we were already on if such an event occurred, to the point where you would see a sudden return to glaciation, a return of the cold, pardon me, a return to cold temperatures, a return of the ice age. And so some of us are thinking that's what happened during the Younger Dryas period. We had maybe not one major impact, but possibly multiple minor impacts. Some things maybe not didn't even come to the point where they hit the ground. We've had some difficulty trying to figure out where the impact crater is if there was an impact. It turns out that you don't actually have to have objects large enough to leave a crater to evacuate atmosphere. You're saying impact evaporated so much water that it rained hard for a couple. Maybe, maybe. Also, another thing to consider is if you have a higher pressure atmosphere, an atmosphere that is more dense, there's more pressure in it, and you alleviate some of that pressure. Part of that pressure is going to be water vapor, water in its vapor state. If a sufficient amount of water in its vapor state is sitting here in the atmosphere, then you would have lower sea levels without necessarily having any change in terrestrial ice. So a lot of that water may have already been in the atmosphere whenever the impact event occurs. And so you're going to see lots and lots and lots of rain. Now, the statement that God will never destroy the world by flooding again, in a way, this is borne out because we've already lost the pressure. And there's not really a whole lot more that we can wring out of the atmosphere until we've managed to alter the climate in such a way that we put it back into the atmosphere. So there we go. Temperatures rise a little bit worldwide. We have more water leaving the world's oceans and going into the atmosphere on a regular basis. That's the result of higher temperature. We're going to have water changing its state. It doesn't have just two states. It has three that we experience on Earth. I guess we'd have a plasma state too, but I don't think we're going to see water in plasma form on Earth. We have it solid, we have it liquid, and we have it in gaseous form. So the worry about the ice sheets melting and the ocean levels rising, I don't think is quite a big a concern as some folks want to make it out to be, because they're overlooking the other state of water. Yeah. Now my math could be wrong, but whenever I was going over, well, how much atmosphere have we theoretically lost? I looked at the atmospheric pressure that human beings are comfortable at. Our ideal atmospheric pressure for maximum human health, how much pressure should we be under? Right now, most people live under too low of pressure. Or the pressure around us is too low. And so we wind up having health problems as a result of it. The ideal pressure for human beings to live under would require about 133 trillion tons of additional atmosphere if we were to be able to pressurize the planet back to the point where the atmospheric pressure was ideal for human health. And at that rate, if we just maintain the current ratios of everything, well, we would be getting an awful lot more oxygen in our lungs with every breath. Our healing would be accelerated. We would be living longer. We wouldn't age as rapidly. Funny how that is, because there are some of those indigenous stories that state that following the flood event, that people did not live as long as they used to live. So this could be the reason why. You're saying, well, what does that say for me moving to a mile high in Arizona? Well, that's optimistic. If we're doing the thing that we should be doing, if we're actually working on attempting to replenish our atmosphere, then being a mile high in Arizona here in a few years might be just fine. Then again, I don't know that we're going to be I don't know that we're going to be working to replenish our atmosphere all that much. Because the current trend seems to be where people are trying to push sequestration of carbon dioxide instead of processing it through the carbon cycle. That's troubling. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to do that much in the way of carbon sequestration. a lot of the plans require that you kind of had to make extra CO2 in order to be able to trap the CO2 in the first place. So the process of getting your reagents together to trap the CO2 would release more. Essentially, it winds up being a great way to spend an awful lot of money to accomplish really nothing. And who knows? Maybe the political masters will be happy, right? They'll be happy with that. We'll throw money at the problem. They seem to like throwing money at problems, so they can throw money at the problem to have somebody go break chemical bonds, release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, take the reagents that they created by breaking chemical bonds, and use that to pull CO2 out of the atmosphere to turn it back into carbonate rock again. And we can call that CO2 sequestration. Everybody go, yay, yay, we did something about our carbon footprint, as if that was a problem to begin with. Right now, if we're pumping carbon out of the ground and we're burning it as fuel, we're taking carbon that has been in the ground, fossilized carbon, if you want to call it fossilized carbon. I don't think it's fossil sources anyway. We're taking the carbon, we're taking oxygen from the atmosphere, we're causing them to combust, and we're creating carbon dioxide. So the CO2, the carbon part came out of the ground, but the oxygen didn't. It came out of the air. The only way we get that oxygen back in the air is if we take that CO2 and we break the bonds again to produce oxygen and sugars through photosynthesis. You might be able to do it through a chemical process, but if we do that, we don't get the oxygen back. And that's kind of important because we don't want to be taking CO2 from the atmosphere that has oxygen from our atmosphere and sequestering all of that molecule. We'll be depleting our supply of oxygen and thinning our atmosphere out even more. So we would not be helping any situation. We'd only be making it worse. All right. But if we look at carbonate rocks, now those were formed peaking at about 20,000 years ago. We're talking about seashells here. All these marine animals that died suddenly and at a time where either the necessary decomposers weren't present to attack those shells, complete the carbon cycle, and put that carbon back out into the atmosphere. Either they weren't present, or due to the nature of that particular cataclysm, they were prevented from having access to large amounts of carbonate shells. That calcium carbonate becomes limestone. That limestone is fossilized atmosphere, fossilized oxygen as well as carbon. So whenever we make concrete, whenever we break the bonds that made the limestone, we release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That CO2 is not carbon for the earth, O2 from the atmosphere. It's both carbon and oxygen that were from the atmosphere that have been lost to the planet, that were not going to be released until such a time as that section of crust entered a subduction zone, got pulled into the mantle, and at some point in the future was vented through a volcano. That's a very long, very slow process to get an awful lot of atmosphere back that was lost in a hurry, relatively speaking. Oddly enough, human beings might be the one creature that Earth could have produced to correct the problem that occurred whenever it lost that atmosphere to the formation of carbonate rock. And the one thing that humans do that may actually help save life on this planet is the production of carbon dioxide. I want to start the glacial interlude. Green Greg's is talking to people who listen in on podcasts. I want to start the Glacial Interlude Preservation Society, GIPS. If you join, you'll be a Gipper. The Glacial Interlude Preservation Society. I don't know. The sun's a powerful force, but we'll do our part for global warming. That's it. Of course, the thing is, if we are actually going to succeed in restoring the Earth's atmosphere, trying to replenish some of that mass that we've lost, so that whenever we take a breath, whenever we inhale, whenever we fill our lungs, we're actually filling our lungs to a capacity of oxygen that is appropriate for the health and well-being of the human being, because currently that doesn't happen. Whenever you breathe in, whenever you take a full breath, you are not getting as much oxygen to your lungs as you should be getting for optimal health. But we can change that. We actually could change that. It wouldn't be quick. It won't be easy. The old method prescribed to that was simply to grow a garden and to have lots of kids and teach them to grow a garden too, expand the garden across the planet. That was the old basic plan. The old basic plan. I haven't sat down to look over the quantity of CO2 that's being released by volcanic activity on a regular basis and plotting to see if that, along with working on expanding and growing Earth's forests, would be sufficient to break that CO2 out of sequestration to replenish our atmosphere. It might be that over a long period of time, it could possibly be sufficient without having to resort to going ahead and digging out carbonate rock and us cooking the carbonate rock in order to release CO2 to make concrete and, of course, get the atmosphere back out. It's possible that just the actions of the planet with humans doing what humans should be doing, which is growing forest gardens and living in the woods, that may be sufficient alone to restore the planet's atmosphere. But if we wanted to do it a little bit faster, just a little bit faster, just a tiny little bit faster, then we might want to consider finding a way to efficiently break the bonds of carbonate rock, release the CO2 into the atmosphere, and process that by planting multi-layered forest systems, rainforests really, all over the planet, wherever we possibly can. The planet would wind up getting a little bit warmer as a result. Not because of the carbon dioxide, but because of the thermal mass. Incidentally, right now, the greatest thermal mass on planet Earth is nitrogen. Methane is a larger molecule. Carbon dioxide is a larger molecule. Methane is an even larger molecule. And on a molecule by molecule basis, if we were just counting molecular mass, yeah, they have greater mass. Because they have greater mass, each molecule can absorb and hold more thermal energy on a molecule by molecule basis. That's all true. However, our atmosphere as an aggregate is the thermal mass that's being heated. We don't have portions of it that get heated more than other portions of it. And I'm out of tea. I'm out of tea. I did a comparative study on this a while back. It was not really a study. It's just looking at the data and going, okay, let's ask some questions here. If CO2 is such a wonderful insulating material, then we should be able to take a look at a planet like Mars that has many more times in millions of tons of CO2, many times more CO2 than Earth does. Mars has much more CO2 in mass, in total mass, than Earth has. Yet, whenever you go to Mars, middle of summer, at the equator, you could have a temperature fluctuation of over 100 degrees Celsius from day to night. During the day, it's almost sweater weather on the surface of Mars. At night, you'll freeze in an instant. So apparently CO2 is not this wonderful, magical, insulating material that large amounts of it will cause runaway thermal issues. There's more of it on Mars than there is on Earth. A greater mass of it on Mars than there is on Earth. And Mars has an atmosphere only 1% as thick as Earth's. So even though there's more of this wonderful insulating CO2 on Mars than there is on Earth, because the real factor is thermal mass, Mars' atmosphere can't hold enough heat between the day and the night cycle to make a difference. So it's not the CO2, it's the thermal mass. So we increase Earth's thermal mass altogether because we're increasing our atmospheric density, the planet will get warmer. It's true, the planet will get warmer. A lot more of that water that's currently on the surface of the oceans will wind up going into the atmosphere. It'll join the water cycle, and we will have a lot more rain in places that weren't getting rain before, because now there's more water in the water cycle. More water in the water cycle means more water in more areas where there wasn't rain. Where are we not getting rain? Desert areas, right? This is where we weren't getting rain before. The Sahara, the Gobi, Western United States, Arizona. I don't see a problem here. More water in the water cycle means they're going to get more water in Arizona. That means they're going to get more water in Nevada. Or if you live in Nevada, you call it Nevada. That means the Ogallala Reservoir has a better chance of getting recharged. People can stop pumping it dry left and right. You have to adapt your water usage to the region you're living in. Otherwise, you do wind up depleting your aquifer, and then you don't have it to draw upon whenever you need it. Try to be a little bit more realistic with your water needs. Take us in here in Oklahoma, for example. We get about 40 inches of rain on the average per year, but we don't get it all at the same time. So we can hold it, we can bank it, we can store it in reservoirs, and we can pump it out and use it during that portion of our growing season when we're not getting rain. So we can bank that water and use it for later. We have a total growing season of about 200 days. So 40 inches of rain, even though it's not all at a convenient time, that's a good amount of water. We can actually use the water that we have in relationship to our growing season and do fine. But in other places that don't get as much rain, whenever we try to pump that out of the aquifer and keep up with the theoretical growing season, then we wind up depleting the aquifer, because you can actually grow more days out there in the desert than there's water available to grow. There's this question of realigning ourselves back to the rhythms of nature, not using more than the nature is putting down, but also as the atmosphere becomes more dense, as it becomes warmer, as more water enters into the water cycle, we can see areas in the desert out there in New Mexico, for example, that currently are only getting 10 inches of rain per year. We could see that double. We could even see it triple. I doubt it'll get up to 40 like we have here, but they have a similar growing season. It's a similar climate zone, similar growing season, just different amount of water getting to them. So all these things can change, and it's not a bad thing that the planet warms up. Not a bad thing at all. Guys talking about Elon and Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know. Elon grew up in Joburg, and he was a weird kid, so he got picked on a lot. That means that you kind of have to develop some skills. I hate to break it to you, but this us nerds, we could be dangerous backed into a corner. Especially if you teach us jujitsu. Jujitsu can be used to great effect. All right, we've been going long enough. StreamYard's still not showing me my comments here, so I can't use it. I have to troubleshoot it when we get off. So, should I pack up and leave the state that I'm in, the county that I'm in, the country that I'm in? Well, hopefully, if you're waking up to the realization that things are getting bad and they haven't progressed to a point where it's beyond all hope, then I would say no, don't leave, but do take measures to ensure that you're going to be okay during these times of tribulation that are upon us. I guess, yeah, we're going to use the term tribulation. If you don't have the ability to get out of the city, at least make and establish connections with friends that are in the country. People that can, say, grow your bacon for you or grow your beef for you. And maybe you go in halves with a few neighbors so you can divide up a side of beef. You have one side of beef for one group, one family, one side of beef for the other. You fill your freezers up. You go ahead and make the connections with the farmers now. You can pay them for the feed and for the care of the livestock. And because you are the owner of the livestock by this agreement, you're buying the livestock from the farmer. And you can buy the livestock on the hoof before it's even grown out from the farmer. The farmer's doing you the service of raising your livestock for you. Since you own the beef and you are involved, hopefully, in the butchering process of that meat whenever you bring it back back to the city with you. A lot of the things that can be done in the way of regulations trying to force you to eat the bugs do not apply. If you own the cow, then whenever you go collect the milk, you don't have to worry about the regulations that say that certain things have to be done, pasteurization, etc. If you want to have raw milk, you can buy the cow. Doesn't mean that you have to raise the cow yourself. People board animals all the time. It's done with horses quite a lot. But think about this. You can have somebody board your milk cow. Instead of trying to have a dairy yourself, operating a dairy is no joke. Backyard cows is not really a thing. Cows take up a lot of space. They eat a lot of feed. Even if you're just importing in everything, right? If you're buying in your hay, if you're buying in the grain, if you're buying in all the inputs, which you don't want to do, it's too expensive. Don't do it. You'll go broke trying to feed a cow by buying everything. But even if you did, you still need a lot of space to raise cattle. And raising a cattle operation, raising cattle for dairy is an operation that it requires a lot of cows. You want to have them coming due at different times. You don't want to have all of your cows calving at the same time, all of the milk. Now, if you're doing beef cattle, then it's not a big deal if all of your cows come due at the same time, because you're going to be running cow calf. You're not going to be milking them, or if you are milking them, you might milk them a little bit, but the rest of the time the calf has got it, right? If you're running a dairy operation, you want to stagger out the time whenever your heifers give birth. You want to stagger out the time whenever they're drying after that period of time. You can have them milk for about 300 days out of the year. The rest of the time they need to dry, and then they need to get pregnant again. So you're going to be alternating your cows. That means if you only have the one, there's a time of the year that you're not going to get milk. And one cow, if it's a Holstein, you're going to get like 9 gallons a day. It's a lot of milk. A lot of milk from one cow. So you have problems of one is an overabundance, but it's not so much of an overabundance that you have a lot of excess to sell. For that, you'd need 2, but then you'd still have those times whenever you don't have milk from anybody at all. Ideally, you need probably around 16 to 20 heifers that you're running at any particular time, rotating their birthing cycles so that you constantly have milk. Now, what you're going to do with the calves, that's an entirely different story. You might raise them to a certain point and then sell them at the auction and let the beef farmer have them from there. Or you could make an arrangement with the people in town that would like to have beef and go, okay, we're going to raise these beef cattle for you. We're going to raise them as steers, and whenever it's time for them to be butchered, then you guys come on down here. You're going to participate in the butchery. It's your cow and your meat, which means the FDA can't say really anything about it. Unless, of course, they change the rules. But once again, this is just a way that you can go around some of these rules and not have to worry about, well, I don't have the money for me to be able to have a homestead. Well, maybe you don't have to have the homestead. Maybe you can establish that relationship. Now, as far as other things are concerned, if you discover that your society where you live is just going to pot, you're going to have to make an assessment. Is it something that can be changed by people of good character that are in the community, acting in the community, that are vocal and visible in the community? And if it is possible that you can take that situation and turn it around, I would implore you, do not leave your house because you discovered that it's dirty. Stay at home and work on fixing your house, work on cleaning it up. But if it is gotten to the point where it is not possible for you to be able to affect the change and make it a better place, then yeah, you may want to consider packing up and moving. And it's a horrible thing. You may leave behind friends, you may leave behind family, but if it's absolutely necessary for your survival, then yes, go ahead and move. But if it's not, if it hasn't got to that point yet, if you're looking at it and see it's getting bad, don't let it get worse. Start embodying natural law in yourself. You don't have to control the entire country. You don't even have to control your entire neighborhood, just as far as your arms can reach. Just make that dedication to yourself. that as far as my arms can reach, I will observe and enforce the natural law around me. And if enough people do that, we get out of this problem. We really do. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you tonight. As always, I hope you found tonight's video informative or entertaining. If you did, you know what to do. I'll catch you next time. Until then, yes, as Brian says, stay and fight. Maybe not necessarily fight. Live visibly. Let people see you as an example of how you should be living. Whenever they see what you're doing and they say, hey, you know what? I like what's going on there. I like this attitude that this neighborhood has. I like the way people do business. I like the way they conduct themselves. I like the way that we respect each other. If enough people do that, then we can have an avoidance of that dark future that we're all so worried about and so concerned about. So I'm going to leave you with that. Greg, we do need to get together and do some videos in the future. I did send a response to that email that you sent me. I hope that the description of how to get here is good enough. I'll talk to you all later. Until then, good night, everybody.